The providence of God is shown throughout tonight's lesson through the faith of Mordecai. We will see in this lesson how God's providence is on display. We will discuss God's providence more at the end of this lesson. Mordecai is mentioned, and I'm sorry, I can't memorize anymore. I go here and I go there, so I got to read it. So just bear with me. Mordecai is mentioned in Ezra 2:2 and Nehemiah 7:7. He was a captive of Nebuchadnezzar after the fall of Jerusalem, but he is best known in the story of Esther. Mordecai's name is mentioned 56 times in the book of Esther. Although the story revolves around Queen Esther, Mordecai is one of the main characters in this story of history. As you may recall, this story starts out with King Ahasuerus, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the princes of the provinces. They feasted 180 days, after which he gave another feast lasting 7 days for all those who were in Shushan, the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the royal palace. On the 7th day, when the king was merry with wine, he sent 7 of his eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti before him, wearing her royal crown so he could show off her beauty. She refused to come, and he got angry. It was decided by his council that she would be queen no longer. After the king's anger was appeased, his servants suggested to bring in all the beautiful young virgins to be considered for the king. This pleased him, and he did so. In Shushan there was a Jew named Mordecai. He had brought up Esther, his cousin, as his daughter because her parents were dead. She was beautiful, and so she was taken to the palace and put in the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. She found favor in his eyes, so he took good care of her. She did not reveal any of her family because Mordecai told her not to. Mordecai kept watch on Esther's progress every day. After she completed 12 months of preparation, she was brought to the king. The king loved Esther more than all the women, so he made her queen. The king made a great feast, the Feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants. Mordecai discovers a plot against the king by 2 of his eunuchs. He tells Esther, and she informs the king in Mordecai's name. When it was confirmed, the 2 eunuchs were hanged, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. We see the confidence of Mordecai in exposing this plot. After this, the king promoted Haman and set his seat above all the other princes. All the king's servants were commanded to bow and pay homage to Haman. Mordecai would not bow or pay homage to Haman because he was a Jew. This filled Haman's heart with wrath. He decided not to lay his hands on Mordecai because he was told about Mordecai's people. So instead, he decided to get rid of all the Jews throughout the whole kingdom of the king. He hatched a plot to destroy them. He told the king that these people do not keep your laws. So a decree was written that they would be destroyed. The king gave Haman his signet ring, and he sealed it, and it became law. Letters were sent out to all the king's provinces to kill, to destroy, and to annihilate all the Jews. Mordecai learned all what had happened, so he rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried. In every province there was a great mourning, fasting and weeping among the Jews. Esther's maids and eunuchs told her she was deeply distressed. She sent her eunuch to talk with Mordecai to find out all that was going on. Mordecai sent word back to Esther about the decree, and and told her to go to the king to plead for her people. Esther knew the law about coming before the king without being called. It could mean death unless he holds out his golden scepter to you, and she had not been called. This was told to Mordecai, and he sent word back to her. Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet you know, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? We see Mordecai's confidence in letting her know she has a responsibility to her people, even if it costs her her life. Esther then puts a plan in place to get the king's attention. The queen found favor in the king's eyes, and he held out the golden scepter to her. He asked her, "What is your request?" And she replied that she wanted him and Haman to come to the banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, the king asked her, "What is your petition? It shall be granted to you." She asked him to bring Haman and come to a banquet the next day, and she would tell him her request. This made Haman very happy until he saw Mordecai in the king's gate. He goes home and tells his wife everything that has happened. His wife suggests building a gallows and talking to the king about hanging Mordecai the next morning, and then he could go to the banquet happy. That night the king couldn't sleep, so he asked for the records of the chronicles and discovered nothing had been done for Mordecai for exposing the plot about the king. The king asked, "Who is in the court?" And as it happens, Haman had just entered to talk to the king about hanging Mordecai. The king invited him to ask what should be done for the man that the king wishes to honor. Haman assumes that he was talking about him, so he said to the king, "Let a royal robe be brought, which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, saying, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.' Then the king tells Haman, 'Hurry, take the robe and the horse, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who sits within the king's gate.' So Haman did as the king commanded. We see the confidence of Mordecai as he is paraded through the city square. When Haman goes home in the morning with his head covered, his wife says to him, 'If Mordecai before whom you have begun to fall is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him.' While they were talking, the eunuchs arrived to take Haman to the banquet. At the banquet, the king asked Esther, 'What is your petition?' Esther then tells him about her people. The king asked, 'Who is he and where is he who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing?' She answered, 'It is the wicked Haman.' So Haman is terrified before them, and the king in his anger goes out in the garden. But Haman stays with Esther, pleading for his life. When the king returns, Haman has fallen across the couch where Esther was. The king said, 'Well, will he assault the queen? Will he also assault the queen while I'm in the house?' The king has Haman hanged on the gallows that Haman had built for Mordecai. That day the king gave Esther the house of Haman, and after she explained to the king, she was related to Mordecai. He took his signet ring and gave it to Mordecai. Queen Esther then appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. The king gives his permission to write a decree for the Jews and seal it with his signet ring. Mordecai became great in the king's palace. The confidence Mordecai showed in all his decisions led him to become a great man in the king's province. Mordecai the Jew was sent to the king, was second to the king, and was great among the Jews and well received by the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people and speaking peace to all his countrymen. While researching this, I found something in this Defending the Faith study Bible that pertains to the book of Esther. And it's real small, so I'm going to have to get it up here close. The name of God is never mentioned in the book of Esther. For that reason, some have questioned its inspiration and place in the canon. A close analysis of the book, however, shows that it meets the criteria for inspiration. The fact that it does not use God's name is significant because the events that happened in the book provide some of the clearest examples of special providence in all of Scripture. Of all the young women in the entire kingdom who King Ahasuerus could have picked, he chose the Jewess Esther. Her cousin Mordecai was in the perfect place to discover a plot against the king's life, and his deed was written down in the book of history. This written account of Mordecai's commendable actions were unnoticed for many days until one fortuitous night, the history book he read, the king could not sleep. Due to his insomnia, he ordered that the history book be read, and it just so happened that Mordecai's discovery was the chosen text. While the king was deciding what to do in honor of Mordecai, Haman entered his presence, hoping to request that the king hang Mordecai instead. Haman was instructed to parade the Jew through the streets as one whom the king chose to honor. Haman was later hanged on the very gallows that he had built to hang Mordecai. The number of perfectly aligned events that brought about the Jews' salvation were not a coincidence. One of the most familiar passages in the text is found in the statement that Mordecai made to Esther. He admonished her to have the courage to go to the king, even though that she might die. And he said, "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Notice that Mordecai's statement implies that the circumstances that led to Esther being the queen could have been arranged intentionally and purposely for her to save the Jews. The king gives his permission to write a decree for the Jews and seal it with his signet ring. Oh, I didn't turn the page. Even though God was not mentioned in the book of Esther, we can see his hand in many of the events that took place in tonight's lesson. Do we have the confidence in our faith that Mordecai had to always do the right thing? Tonight, if anyone has a need to be baptized in the church and added to the church, or if you need prayers, please come forward as we stand and sing.